Good morning, my lovely people, and Happy New Year! Today we are January 2nd, and so why not talk about New Year's resolution? Now, I know that I made a video about this last year and why resolutions don't work. And so, keeping with the theme of New Year, New Me, I've heard that said so many times, and personally, I have said that many times myself, and to be honest, that just doesn't work. And so today I want to shift the focus away from New Year's resolution and move towards habits. And I want to give you all my secrets about how I form habits and one of the best ways to form habits and break bad ones so that we can get this new year off to a good start. In James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, which I would really recommend at least reading once in your lifetime, he talks about the process of building new habits and breaking old bad ones, okay? This is referred to as the habit loop, which is broken down into 4 simple steps. Cue, craving, response, and reward. Okay, so cues are what triggers us to initiate in the behavior. This is then followed by craving, which is the motivational force behind the habit. So for example, and what I mean by this is the motivation to get relief from smoking a cigarette. So we're not necessarily looking to smoke the cigarette, but we're looking to get that sense of relief. Okay, so cue, craving, then the response. The response is the actual act of performing the habit, and whether or not we respond and actually do the act will be determined in part by how much friction there is. So how difficult it is for us to perform the thing. This is then closed by the reward. So it's the satisfaction of having done the thing, and the habit loop will repeat itself over and over and over again. Let me give you a concrete example of what the habit loop might look like. Your phone buzzes or vibrates or pings or whatever. That is the cue, the trigger to perform something, a behavior, okay? Then the craving would be the motivation to know the content of the message. The response is to pick up your phone and look at your messages, and then the reward is having that satisfaction of knowing now the content of the messages. And so what happens is over time, every time that your phone buzzes, is associated with the act of picking up your phone and looking at it. And this, if you do it enough times, will build the habit of automatically looking at your phone unconsciously every time that there's a buzz sound associated with your phone. Okay, so how do we then form a new habit? First of all, with the cue, you want to make it as obvious as possible. So for example, when I was trying to get on the habit of flossing my teeth, I made the floss picks very obvious because I put them right next to the toothpaste with my toothbrush. And so every time that I was going to brush my teeth, I get the cue of the floss picks are there, they're easy, they're visible, okay? The craving, then you want to make it satisfying. So with the teeth flossing, I think that it was one of those things that when I was initially doing it, I was using it in moments when I had actual stuff stuck in my teeth. And so it was very rewarding and satisfying to use the floss pick and get the stuff out of my teeth, okay? The response, we want to make it as easy as possible. So we don't want to add more friction than there needs to be. This is the reason why I selected or opted for using toothpicks or floss picks, initially, because they're easier to use than actual floss. I don't need to go in and get the floss, cut it, do the whole shebang. There's little space, there's not enough space between my teeth, and so I have a hard time flossing my teeth just manually. And I know that my partner uses a reusable floss pick where you take the floss, you wrap it around the plastic shape for the floss pick, and then you do that yourself. That was too much friction for me initially, and so I made it as easy as possible. And then the reward, once again, you want to make it satisfying, and with that, I added this other thing of doing the mouth rinsing with, what's it called? Mouthwash? I'm losing my words this morning, but using mouthwash essentially. So the whole process of it left me feeling like my mouth was very clean, I was satisfied, and repeated enough, now I have adopted the habit of flossing my teeth daily, and I don't even think about it anymore. It's an automatic I do it unconsciously and it's awesome. At first, it was hard and I had to make a conscious effort to do it regularly, daily. Now it's at the point where the habit has been formed. This is something that I do as I identify as a flosser, and it's easy for me to maintain. Okay, so now that we understand how to form a habit and how to increase the likelihood of forming a good habit, right? We want to minimize the friction, the tension that makes it difficult to do. We want to make the cues visible, attractive, satisfying. How do we then break a bad habit? Okay, first of all, I want to emphasize the fact that we are not getting rid of the habit. We're simply replacing it for something new. Okay. And what I really like from James Clear, what he says is that we're not trying to become someone new. We're trying to go back to the person that we were before we had this habit in place. Okay. So even just switching language like that can take some pressure off of you, because it's not like you need to reinvent yourself and become this whole new person. You just need to go back to the person that you used to be. So taking a similar model as I had just gone through with the good habits, for the bad habits, the cue, you want to make it invisible. Okay. And then for the craving, you want to make it unattractive. You want to make it not easy to do for the response, and for the reward, you want to make it unsatisfying. So let's give ourselves a concrete example. If you're finding that every time you're trying to be productive or study or whatever it may be, you're always going on your phone, you're always checking it, it's habitual at this point, the thing to do would be to take your phone and physically remove it from the room that you're in. So when you go on your laptop, you don't have your phone waiting for you on the desk that's cueing you, pick this up, distract, go on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and waste time on that. So take your phone, put it in a box somewhere outside of the room. So that already removes the cue. It removes the trigger of having to pick up your phone and look at it. Then for the craving, we can use other things. Okay, you can use breathing to help alleviate the sense of relief that you're trying to get from the phone, and see if you can just breathe and maybe write one sentence that you're working on. A response, we want to make it difficult to do. So that means that you need to physically get up from the room, walk downstairs, go get your phone, and maybe it's you put it in a strategic location where it's surrounded by your roommates or whatever. Maybe you give it to your roommates, to your parents, or to your partner so that they have to hold on to it. And that means that you need to physically go ask them to have your phone. That's going to add so much tension that you might not want to even go get your phone. And then for the reward, we want to make it unsatisfying. So it becomes this whole process of you're losing time, you're wasting space because it's almost like you feel guilty because you have to go communicate with other people that you're wanting your phone. And so for good habits, we want to make them visible and attractive and easy to do. And for bad habits, we want to make them, the cues, invisible, not satisfying, not rewarding, unattractive, and hard to do, okay? But then additionally, we want to not just get rid of it, we want to replace it with something else. So if your habit right now that you have is every time that you go to study, you go on Instagram and you scroll TikTok and all your social media, we don't want to just stop doing that. We want to replace it with something new. So maybe the thing that you start replacing it with is that every time that you go to study, you do some breathing exercises, or you take a break and walk around the room, or you bring an apple with you and you'll eat your apple to give yourself a bit of a break. So we don't want to get rid of the breaks that your phone was allowing you to have. We want to replace them with something that allows your mind to rest and relax and replenish itself so that when you're going back to studying, you're feeling focused and motivated. More practical tips for this, as I had already mentioned, is choosing a substitute. The second thing would be to being mindful of your cues and reducing those as much as possible. So if you're someone that smokes and that increases every time that you're drinking, cutting back on the drinking can be useful. Something else is a kind of accountability group where you have friends or close family members that you hold each other accountable to make sure that you're keeping up with the habit. So if you're trying to build this habit of reading every morning, well, then you might have a group where every time that you're not doing it, you have to pay everyone $1. This is what I was doing last year, and it was really helpful to give me that sense of community, of motivation to try to get those habits in place. For flossing, that's also something I was using. I was using an accountability group. Okay, so that's one thing. Surrounding yourself with people who have similar visions and values is detrimental to making sure that your habits stick, because if you're trying to cut back on drinking and all your friends that you have are all party friends who all they do is go out and drink all the time, well, then it's going to be really hard to cut back on the drinking without losing the essence of those friendships. And so if you can move away and see if you have other people in your life that share similar visions and values, that will make the whole process much easier. And the last thing I will say is to plan for failure, okay? Habits take time, it takes hard work, it takes effort, it takes consistency. There will be times when you don't do it. The best thing you can do at those moments is recognize that it's okay, that you're human, that we're not perfect, and to get back on the habit loop as quickly as possible. Remember that setting habits takes time and effort, and that if you're going into this new year with these big, unrealistic goals, maybe it's time to check yourself and ask yourself, is this realistic? And how can I break this down into smaller, more manageable steps so that eventually I can get to this bigger vision of where I'm trying to go? On that note, thank you so much for joining me today. Happy New Year once again, and I will see you back here next time for another episode of On the Line.